Well, there we go. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the channel. This is Adam Abraham, and this is my. I'm getting acronyms everywhere. I picked up another one, but the first and foremost, this is the Onescious Wealth Movement discourses for right now. Okay, I'm not calling this necessarily my show or the name of it, but it is the purpose of what I'm doing here. I am coming forth. And in fact, this is a daily effort, if you will. And I don't mean this in the form of or an idea or the context of how we think of as work. This is not work per se. This is energy being expended for a particular idea, concept, intention, and result. Okay. And what's the idea? The idea has to do with creating abundance for yourself. And we're talking in a new way. And when I say for yourself, it means no matter who you are, no matter where you are on the planet. So I am talking to you. It doesn't matter who or where you are. And it's a new way because it would be literally a process wherein instead of you doing all the gesticulations that you do to go through all the things to try to appease or get someone else's approval, you literally exercise, you decide to become yourself. And this is why I titled this one today Transcendental Consciousness. We adopt a state of transcendental consciousness, and we'll talk about it. I have been talking about it and we'll continue to. But what is going to happen when you do this in turn, as opposed to going out, rushing out, and attempting to get someone to do this, deal with someone who wants to get the most from you for the least amount of gratitude, remuneration, and everything else. Simply get back into a space of transcendental consciousness. Do some steps that we are talking about and will be talking about. Make a contribution into a pool of whatever the number is, but it's something that anyone can get. Most people on this entire planet, I'm talking about virtually anywhere, can do this. And then do some other steps, but then the return, in kind return, comes back to you. Because what you're going to basically do is you're going to invite three people to do the same thing that you did. But before all of that is even possible, your own frame of mind, your own frame of heart must be addressed. It cannot be ignored, as is presently the norm in virtually all monetary and exchanges of value. And I say virtually all. You can have it where you are. Well, I'm a charity. I'm a this. I'm a that or the other. And I don't. I'm tax exempt and stuff like that. We're doing good stuff because the government has deemed it good enough that they won't tax us for it. But ultimately, we're asking. We're in the habit of asking uh, for value from people without returning value to them. We've done it so much that we don't even regard the fact that they are, and we know the universe is going to take care of them. Well, if it's going to take care of them, why are you not simply asking the universe yourself and let it take care of you? See, there's a disconnect somewhere wherein we have been attached to systems and habits of behavior wherein what we put out in under universal law, what you put out comes back to you, and it'll come back to you in the kind and in the way that you give out to it. That still exists. But but the but is that we have created our own laws that are underneath universal law. They actually act as a buffer. They act as, in some regards, as a distractor and as a diverter of the effects relative to universal law, because ultimately our relationships are with each other. And we have created these entities, which are known to be what's called fictional entities. They call them corporations, to the point where you're dealing with, well, not that you're dealing with a corporation, but you think you're dealing with one. You think you're dealing with an entity that actually exists. No, you're really dealing with people who are standing behind or hiding, in some cases, behind this corporate structure that they've set up. That's their buffer. And they can actually act in very humane ways and also inhumane ways. And the milieu, the economic system, doesn't differentiate. There makes no distinctions. There are no benefits or non-benefits or detriments to how you act. They have other, um, you can say, places where those things can get adjudicated. But in the meantime, people are not incentivized to take ownership of and regulate the quality of their own consciousness. Transcendental consciousness gets you certain types and qualities of experience. I also refer to it as consciousness because it involves a connection to and an awareness of and connection to all. We are connected to all that exists, always have been, always are, always will be. Yet, if we're thinking that we're not, we're thinking that we are a faction versus someone else, thinking that there is strength in numbers. No, there's strength in truth. There's strength in love. The numbers are actually meaningless. Yes, I said meaningless. The state is more important than the numbers themselves, and I'll go into why. I did a little So that's the map of consciousness. That's the conscious wealth movement, because in that oneness, in that awareness thereof, in the embracing of this concept of consciousness and oneness with all, you also are, and we are also each connecting to, or should I say, reactivating. The point is more so activation, and the activation is never not activated. Your highest self is never not there. It's just oftentimes, hey Derek, it's oftentimes suppressed by the lack of, or the less than the higher aspects of ourselves, because when we get fearful, when we get all those things, then that basically kind of, you can say, dilutes our power, and it does it uh, without fail. And on the other hand, when we restore our conscious awareness and knowledge of those things, those aspects and higher aspects of ourselves, it also amplifies and strengthens it brightens our light. It amplifies the power for our thoughts to act, and our thoughts to come back, what we put out, for it to come back to us faster and more efficiently. And we're wanting and seeing to create a more efficient return of our thoughts and our intentions, not only into this world, but we take them with us even when we leave. So part of my discourse with all this, and all part of my presentations, is the fact that, one, you're not your body, and no one is, no one ever has been or will be. And you don't want to be your body, quite frankly. Once you realize, oh, this isn't really what I am, in a way of speaking, your body is a mask, so to speak. It's a it's a temple too. It plays a role in allowing you and us to interact with each other in this place called here. All right, it's place and time and space. And the thing is, it's not who we are. It's not what we are, but it's who we think we are, and oftentimes is what we think we are. And that is what we've passed on from, I would say, eons to eons. Uh, Hardly anyone has been on this planet more than maybe a few hundred years. Quite frankly, I have read about some places, documented evidence where people were interacted with, they were talked to, I mean, conversed with. This was in the 1930s. In this one book I read called Man's Higher Consciousness, and there were people interacted with there. Some researchers went to some remote areas and It comes across folks, and there many people were well over 100 years of age. But in addition to that, there were people there that were over 200 and 200 and several decades, over 200 years. And in addition to that, they didn't look old. They weren't sitting around there as just like statues that are barely able to motate and everything else. No, they were actually out in fields. They were working and living and just doing things that they did, as they had done for quite some time. We who we are, the living, don't have timestamps, so to speak. You know, we are more purpose driven because life is purpose driven, much more than we know. And in addition to that, we are, I'd like to say, imaginal in our nature. We are imaginers. We are free to imagine many things, and we are able not only to simply imagine them, but we are also able, according to the energy, I'm talking about that transcendental consciousness that I was talking about earlier, we are able to create what we imagine. Now, take that step and then look at what you are being fed by so many outlets. You are being fed, your consciousness is being introduced to and connected with, if you allow, so much that is really, it's not unimaginable. It's just simply undesirable. Okay, people are now doing the happy dances for their credit score. Okay, and what it does mean having a good credit score actually mean? It mean it's I call it your O ability index. Would that be an OI? It's like, oh, gee, I'm so happy because someone I can go and bow to someone and give them all my information so they can own me. We run, it's like in reverse where we're wanting to have someone accept us to allow us to pay them. Okay. And mortgage and everything else. If I'm designing a new reality for me to come into, that ain't going to be there. Okay. And for that matter, if I find out a way that I can do that now, even in this one, I'm there. Okay. And part of the things, the reasons I talk about imaginal and imagination is because most people, the vast majority of people, based on the inputs that we are constantly dealing with, we're dealing with lies and deception. We're dealing with half truth and non truth. We're dealing with people who want stuff from us without giving back to us that anything that we really want or use. And they also don't even expect to give you anything back. They want to have you give to them, and then they're done. Their mission is accomplished. And for the most part, that's the psychology, that's the thinking that predominates our society, particularly regarding value. People are taking great liberties with value that you put into them, and it's not coming back. Even though within the universal laws, what you put out comes back to you. And in the universe, you are an equal. All is equal. Those guys, everyone else, they're equals too. So don't bitch and moan about them. We are equals. We have to decide, what do we do ourselves? What can we do? What can we learn? And also, that's the second. I got the OWM as the Onescious wealth movement, because I want to see a whole bunch of people start changing that for themselves. And we are talking about a way that you can do it. The second one that just came a couple of days ago to TGU, and that I call that the great unlearning. There is so much psychological and informational crap that's in our heads right now that we think, oftentimes because you've matriculated through a school of higher learning and stuff like that, and they've given you a certificate. You got it on the wall. Oh, there's your proof that you're smart now. Some genius is within everyone. It's in me. It's in you. But you have to cultivate it. I have to cultivate it. But you got to begin by knowing, or at least believing, or at least being neutral to the idea that genius is you, irrespective of what people have said about you over your life, because we are really worn down typically by the words that we pass to each other. And not knowing ourselves, we take those words on as gospel, and then we start living up or down to them according to whatever they are. And so the phrase that I've got there sitting there, in the beginning, etc. This again, this is not for a religious point of view, but it is true. All right. This is not a religious concept or stance. That's not the basis of putting those words down there. The fact of the matter is, words are one of the first signs of evidence of how a person thinks, first of all. And only you know what you think, because you can be thinking stuff and not saying it. So I'd never hear them. Okay. But on some level, they still work. They still are active according to how you feel about them or how you felt about them when you were introduced to them or when they were introduced to your consciousness. If someone said, you'll never amount to anything, shoo, that went in, especially if you cared about what they had to say and you respected them. And people have been, well, if it's in present tense, someone can zing you. But if it's in the past tense, does it mean that you were zung? Okay. Just asking, just thought about that. So the great unlearning is the bringing up an awareness. And it's not like you got to step out and, kind of go through your mind and try to, do some kind of spell check or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, only you can change the meaning of those words and therefore your response to them. Anything that is negative that has you feeling less than capable in the moment to do something or create something better. They talk about some pruning, some shearing, cut them out, kick them to the curb. Okay, so the great unlearning is something that we're I'm suggesting as well. Now, the Onescious wealth movement aspect of all this is actually made, well, let's not talk about the possibility. It's made possible for one thing, but it's the reasons for it. I don't know if I need to go into graphs and everything else on why we need to actually do something different, that the people who are actually running these and thinking about new ways to pull value out of you, okay, uh, when you start knowing and seeing what they're doing, do I need to have a whole bunch of graphs and things like that to show you why it's really kind of wise to look at another way of doing things, to try things that are new? Because one of the things about being um, anxious about future times or even about present times is that they tend to uh, promote a person to kind of stay where they are. You don't kind of know where to go because you've heard this, you've heard that, you've experienced this and that, which was not fun. And so here's something new comes up and is different. And I talked the other day about how when you come in touch with something new, like I have, um, you run the risk of feeling stupid in the beginning, especially, and frankly, no one wants to feel stupid. uh, but you don't learn anything unless you're willing to. You don't learn anything unless you're willing to look stupid, for that matter. So maybe I got that part worked out. But you that's just a place. The feeling passes. And I'll give you a story. I have stories, and I'm going to give you one right now. uh, I I have products. I don't even promote my products on this, and I am at some point in time I'll do it differently or something like that. But I have products that I could be generating an income from and everything else, and they come as they go. I'm grateful for every sale I get, etc. But some years ago, as I got into the business, if you will, of generating or marketing what I call vortex generators, which we put on our water lines. And after now almost 10 years, no, longer than that. Well, at any rate, 13, 14. Uh, oh, this would be my 15th year. Um, After learning about these things, it wasn't my intent to have my own product per se, but that's where things went. And I also, as it turns out, uh, had my own explanations of things. And I think that's why I've stayed with this. My vision or version or explanation, my take on what these devices do and why they do them and why they are important is, from what I can tell, unique. I mean, I've listened to the people that I knew as I was growing up with this or as I was getting acquainted. But as time went on and went on, I started to have my own, uh, you can say, narrative about it, my own story, my own take on what was going on. And I wasn't hearing anyone else say it. And yet it makes sense to me. And it's a reason to continue using it and telling people about it so that there's greater adoption. You, you, you may recall the stories of Henry Ford, for example, where he talked about he wanted a did he want a car in every garage or something like that. I know that I think Bill Gates wanted a computer in every home, and these were well before they were happening, before people knew what they were. When I was still looking askance at these things called personal computers, because like in the late 1970s, I worked for a while for two of the largest mainframe computer companies. Uh, they were the also rans, okay, at the time. They weren't IBM. They were Sperry Univac and Honeywell Information Systems. I worked for them in their large scale systems division. And so, personal computers, whoa, that was like, do I stoop to such a thing? And what's happened? Those affirmations, a computer, well, certainly a house, a car in every garage. Hell, their homes that now have maybe two or three people, and they may have five or six cars. We've certainly established those things, but they began as an intention by the people who had the vision, and they wanted to see it happen, and they gave their efforts to making it happen. Whether we today approve of it or not, we got some judgment about this or that. But you know something? It didn't work just for the visionary, it worked for others who shared that vision. So you had Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, you and Wozniak for Apple. You had Michael Dell with Dell Computers. There were many, many people. I mean, he was selling computers from his dorm in Texas. These are now, and this is all over the world where someone had an idea, picked up, and others picked up on it. They resonated with it, and they created their own versions of the same thing, and they helped make that happen. And essentially, that's what I did with the vortex units. I had the desire to see these things once I saw what they did and knew how they could be a benefit to people. I wanted them to be out there everywhere. Everyone should have these things. They should be, they should have what they do. And it didn't matter how big or how small the place, the line that was on. It didn't matter what the use was. The water that went into that system needed to be in an optimal state on its own. And for all practical purposes, and most of the time, it was not. So with that, I ended up, well, I'm still at it. And we are continuing. We have that vision. I'm working with others. And it's not that we're the biggest sales. We're not. We're small potatoes in our sales, but we got big vision. And we're working in areas that others are not working in. We're pursuing things that others are not pursuing. And not just pursuing, we're creating. If this was about that, I'd show you some stuff that would really be impressive. My point basically is this is about a vision. And so for the Onescious wealth movement, for it to be a movement, it needs to be accessible to anyone. It needs to be replicatable, okay, by anyone. And in that regard, it needs to function in a way that has sufficient uniformity to it. This is where the efficiencies come. This is what actually allows, and let me step one other thing. It should be able to um, have some freedom from the normal and customary interferences that our systems, our present uh, activities, our present methods uh, involve. Okay, people aren't thinking about. I talked about something called zero sum game yesterday, or a zero sum game, where you have winners and you have losers. I listened to this lady today, for example. She's got a video, Lena Petrova. She's a CPA, and she has a video on today. She called it a point of no return. $314 billion deficit as the interest on the national debt spirals out of control. And I thought won't take that long, but I thought I would share a little bit what she had to say. And so I'm going to cue this up, run the get the commercial out of the way. Yeah, we'll do that. You can hear me without this. Get the commercial out the way, and here she is.
More people can see it, it will help increase its reach. And take a look at my newsletter published on Substack.
All
You will
right.
find my social links in the video description below.
Okay.
According to the Treasury's monthly statement that was released today, the Fed's 11 consecutive rate hikes resulted in much, much higher interest payments on its ballooning debt. Interest paid on federal debt was $66.3 billion higher over the first 2 months of fiscal 2024, which covers October and November, than the same time period last year. Just think about that. First 2 months of the government's fiscal year, and interest payments are $66.5 billion more than just 12 months ago.
Interest on the debt. That's money spiraling out of circulation, chasing money that's already out too.
The
Interest.
Treasury statement shows several other quite concerning and shocking numbers that I would like to go ahead and share with you. The Treasury Department said that the government spending in November alone resulted in a deficit of $314 billion, which means that the government spent $314 billion more than it collected, than it earned. Compared to the same month last year, so on a year-over-year basis, government spending accelerated at a rate of 18%. I would like to share some key insights from the Treasury's report. I think those are very, very important.
Oh, and I'm going to pause there and just throw in the fact that their spending increased over that, but it wasn't necessarily into anything that is of value for the people, so to speak, of this country. In fact, fiscal responsibility is actually would be of value too, spending what you got. But here they got 318 billion in spending more than they actually took in.
First, we will take a look at what exactly did the government spend its money on in November. As you can see, sources of income are in green on the left-hand side, and expenses are in blue on the right side. The government's biggest expense was $116 billion in Social Security payments. Now, take a look at how close Medicare and health are to $72 billion that the government spent to pay interest on its debt. It's just several billion dollars apart. Now, what might be even more concerning is that already the government's spending on its surging debt exceeds its monthly defense spending. And any social programs such as veterans benefits and services, education, income security are trailing behind. Those are clearly not a priority. In total, the deficit, or the difference between the amount spent and the amount received, in November totaled $314 billion.
One other thing I would say too, she mentions defense spending as though that is like the next priority from Social Security or whatever. Infrastructure, uh, uh, there are so many things that need to be done here in this country that are not on these lists anywhere because they're not simply being done. We're talking about repairing various things, we're making improvements. They're not being done even on the federal level, which is it ought to be. Uh, and don't even get into healing and other types of things like that. Um, oh, geez, I did this so that I could be part of that, and I see that I didn't click on that. Don't worry. Let me get back to this. It's only a few more minutes with her if I don't talk too much more on it. Here we go. Let's go.
As a side note, I would like to draw your attention to the deficit number. As the deficit keeps growing, the government is going to want to make that gap between its spending and its collections narrower. But since both sides of Congress are unwilling to address their spending issue and spending on the wrong things, one would argue, the only way that they can fix this is by taxing you more.
Well, first of all, I will step in there again. She says the only way, of course, she's a CPA, and that is how she sees it. But she's saying the only way to do that is by taxing you more. That's not true because every time they tax you more, basically, and they get them, if they succeed, they simply spend more. They compensate by simply giving themselves the liberty to spend even more. So it accelerates the situation that they are saying that they want to alleviate. This is how things have been done. This is the habit. This is the pattern. It's not something you want to continue.
Also, as the government seeks to continue financing two wars, sending billions of dollars that it literally does not have overseas, it hasn't even started to address the widening gap between what it spends and what it earns. And this isn't something that can be ignored much longer. Those foreign countries that receive billions in so-called military aid, which only costs thousands of lives, those foreign countries aren't the ones stuck with the bill. American taxpayers now and our children and grandchildren will be stuck footing this bill.
That is a habit.
By the way, several days ago I had an excellent conversation with Dr. Pascal Lota of Neutrality Studies here on YouTube. He runs one of my favorite channels on geopolitics. We discussed the Department of Defense failing its annual audit for the 6th year in a row, and we also spoke about why it happened. If you want to watch that interview next, I highly recommend that you do. I will link it for you in the first pinned comment below, so please take a look. If we look at the same illustration quickly, you may notice that individual income tax revenue that the government collected totaled $127 billion. It doesn't even cover the two biggest ticket items on its outlays listing, right? You can see that. Of course, you might say, well, there are $8 billion in corporate income tax and then another $8 billion in excise taxes that they collected. But those amounts are relatively small, and it would be silly to expect corporate income tax to increase. So individual income tax is what's bound to be one of the main tools that they will use to at least attempt to make up the difference. Here's a better way to see the sources of government's revenue. The biggest portion of the pie chart in blue, those are the taxes that you pay, individual income tax. The pie chart on the left covers November only, while the one on the right covers year-to-date data. Remember that
All right.
government's fiscal year begins on October the 1st, so this pie chart covers October and November combined. America's growing federal budget deficit is a result of irresponsible spending as well as failed fiscal policies. I just showed you the latest Treasury report, but in 2023, the deficit nearly doubled as the result of falling tax receipts and high interest rates, since it costs much more now to make those interest payments. In fiscal 2023, the federal government ran a deficit of $1.7 trillion.
There you go.
Next year, it will continue to grow until interest payments become the biggest ticket item, the biggest expense. A couple
Now, what I'm thinking and seeing, you can see I made the point. I perhaps stayed with her as long as, because there's a little bit more, but the basic point is this. You see where that spending habit already is, and their solution, see, it's a solution for them. And I'll start off by really, I guess, suggesting or saying, as far as it turns to as far as government is concerned, people look upon the idea of government as in a monolithic way, as in terms of a corporation or an organization. It's a government, etc., and as though it has some authority, but ultimately these are people. There is no such thing as a government. There are people who are in positions of trust, and who gives them the trust. Generally speaking, if the system works properly, these people are given that trust. They receive the trust by, they say, the consent of the governed, but it's with that the governed's permission. And ultimately, the work, the effectiveness, the the performance of the people who are in those positions is subject to evaluation, review, as well as I'd say actions to be taken. And I'm not talking specifically or solely about the politicians. This is about anyone and everyone that are in various positions. And the other part of that, though, is that the governed themselves. We've gone from a position of talking about freedom and having all this rah 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 about uh, the land of the free and the home of the brave, and how how courageous do you think people are? How free do you feel your freedoms are? Do you know where did they go? They've been promised. People have been promised. I'm part of a generation that got these promises and promises and promises, and we literally started believing them. And I'm not to say that the initial promises were not sincere. At some level, there was some sincerity, but you have to look also at the results. What happened? And what has consistently happened, we've been in wars, and everything we've declared war on has basically grown. It's gotten bigger. It hasn't simply been this conflict with the people of this country. Yeah, we say conflict with this country, conflict with that. No, it's with people. And it's not even with the people who are sitting there minding their own business. It's with the despots. It's the people who run the countries, who are either following or getting in alignment with some agendas of other people, and those people are they've got the inclination, and they have had, in fact, they've done it where they've attempted to show their own, I want to say, dominion over some other people by getting them, destruction, and they tend to the people themselves, the citizens, are the ones who tend to pay the biggest price in terms of anguish, in terms of trauma and stress and stuff like that. This is what's been happening, and this is also where the monies that these folks have taken. Uh, Gosh, don't even go into the military and how they have misappropriated not billions but trillions of dollars. And I say misappropriate. You don't misappropriate trillions of dollars. You put it someplace into something that you're doing, and then say you just lost it or you can't account for it. That's kind of what they say. Now it's really interesting. I'm There are some things that we're moving toward uh, in 2024 that if I have done a couple of my talks here. I have shown some pieces from a guy named Cliff High, who actually lives in this part of the world. I've never met him, but he has a method by which he analyzes speech because we are in a digital, uh, I say, environment. We are communicating through a digital medium. Anything that is communicated now and is impressed and digitally can now be analyzed, evaluated, interpreted, as well as replicated. I mean, you pass something to someone, well, they get a copy of it. You still got your copy. You're the originator, but okay, that's where we're in right now. But it brings something up that's really I think it's a great learning moment, especially when we talk about transcendental consciousness. The words, the words, the data that Cliff High has analyzed from all of the languaging of the whole of humanity on the planet is turns out to be predictive. So what he has basically done and demonstrated for a good number of years is that he could call out certain things, he could see certain trends before the trends became apparent. And this is because he's taking all of the data. If you're listening to just one, or um, I'm just going to say, if you're listening to people who are in the normal and customary mindset of our society today, you're going to get a narrower perspective, which is not going to be as predictive um, as the way he's got it. So he essentially is saying the whole, in analyzing that, he's getting this. For example, he foresaw the rise in the price of Bitcoin and the rise in the acceptance of cryptocurrencies. But Bitcoin was the beginning of that. So he saw that he called prices and price changes. Price while people were still putting Bitcoin down and the alt space down as they still do today, he was seeing new adoption and he was seeing the value of the tokens going up, and it was much beyond, far beyond coincidence for him to predict the time, even in many cases predict the price. And so that was predictive, and it was coming from an analysis of the languaging. That's how the AI of today, they call an LLMs, the large language models. They're still modeling. They still want to know what we're saying, what we're thinking. And it's, again, what we're thinking and what we're saying. They can do stuff on what we're saying. They can't do things on what we're thinking. However, when you start to realize, again, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was what was God. This is not a religious statement. It is a statement of also a fact. The Word might as well be God, by whatever means you call it, because we are the ones, first of all, that are saying the words, first that are being analyzed. We are the ones that are saying what's going to happen. And in addition to that, if what we are seeing that is predicted to happen isn't to our liking, we can change it. Now, most of the time, and most of the population don't know that part of it, which is one reason, one of two reasons associated with this conscious wealth movement that I am suggesting. The people who manage money, you see what they're doing, and gosh, there's all over the place in terms of how they're managing money. And in addition to that, the trends that you're seeing there for debt and other things, yeah, they're going to continue because the thinking, it has not changed sufficiently to do so by the people who are managing the money, who are making and conceiving various types of monetary policies. Now, on the other hand, the people who are sitting around waiting for or receiving those funds, that means for the most part, the U's and the I's of this society. What are you doing? What am I doing to change things for ourselves? We're looking at the representation that we're getting, which is really not. You're not getting any representation in the real sense. So, what do you do to take care of yourself? Because the stresses are going to still come back down on you. With all the things that these folks have done, they're trying to fix their problem with the deficit by pulling more money more surely out of the source, because the populations and frankly of the world are the source of all of those funds. And so here's again, what can we do? So that is what started things. I learned about cryptos in 2017. I have not, I have participated. I've learned my way a little bit around it. And they really, particularly with Bitcoin in the beginning, it really helped me to begin to see it. Let's back off. It helped me see money as we presently knew it. It allowed me to see it as it's totally different, not as a store of value, not as a mode for the exchange of value, but more so as a mode for inducement of compliance and those kind of things, based on the fact that so many people are in a position of chronic and or acute insufficiency of it. And so ultimately, we are the creators of value. We are the value, and we determine what is of value. And what we think of as a value determines what we convert our efforts and energies into, so that we can actually bring a monetized version of it to us. And our habits, repeated over and over and over again, have gotten us what we've got. The people who run or the monetary system, their habits repeatedly have gotten them what they have, which is a whole bunch of indebtedness. And then the people ourselves, the producers of the system, most people are experiencing what? A whole bunch of indebtedness. And see, in our system, you can even be what's called wealthy. You can be a millionaire and still be in a whole bunch of indebtedness. You buy a bunch of this and you buy a bunch of that, you convert that value into some hard physical asset, and it's not liquid, you don't have liquidity, then guess what? You're between a rock and a hard place. Why are foreclosures happening all the time? And, this is a heartless system. And the people who are running it aren't thinking about putting heart in it. They're not thinking about ways to do it. You know what heart is to them? It would be something called a UBI. Look it up, Universal Basic Income. There's a video, Elon Musk. People love to applaud Musk. Whatever he says is gospel. There's a video of him someplace talking to in some forum. I think it's a World Economic Forum about a UBI. They're figuring they've got to give people, and they're going to determine what they're wanting to give to the rest of us. Okay, people who don't have that need, people who aren't stressed by all these situations, are going to sit back and decide what everyone else gets. And unless you're doing something on your own, unless you're creating something now, and I mean now, I'm not talking next week, I'm not talking about, in fiscal 2020 anything. Unless you're doing something now, you're not creating a potential for something to come that's different. So we spend a lot of time in other places and other times, and a very little time in the now. Most of the time, we're simply talking, and in the talk, without any action behind it, nothing really changes. So everything that I'm about, and I'm sitting here talking, and I will continue to talk till the cows come home, is there is something we can do right now, and I'm inviting you to do it. There is QR code that's sitting there on the side of my, right over there, is to a website, and it's called Co-op Inc. And it's one that I want to invite you to click on, to look at, to get acquainted with, to join, and join me in the activity that it asks us to do. I have watched so many videos, and I stopped. I think what I'm just talking. There are so many applications. There's so many ways that people are making money that is different once the crypto space started to mature, and the infrastructure people have built all these infrastructure to make it possible for us to interact with and exchange value between us. And in addition to creating the new cryptos outside of Bitcoin, of course, the Bitcoin maximalists, as they call them, it's nothing but Bitcoin. But the same principles that brought Bitcoin into existence and had it raise in value is because of adoption. And adoption, it was done by people who really needed something different, and they needed something that would actually work in their benefit. And as it turns out, many of the what's considered less developed countries, such as Africa, for example, Nigeria, and others, are have relative to the U.S. and the civilized countries, uh, have a far greater crypto adoption. Venezuela, um, Pakistan, Afghanistan. I'm just coming out with what's right at the top of my tongue at the moment, but they are all doing something and have been doing something along those lines because of the policies of the people that run the governments, which have been more so in alignment with the people who run the monetary supply that affects this country. They're not all Americans, but certainly there are some of those here too. So the policies of these folks are not conducive. They're not supportive. If you listen to quotes from the heads of the largest financial institutions, they're not even in support of the smaller financial institutions, the banks. They are attempting to herd the public into a particular type of system. They're still trying to work it out in a way that the public will I don't know. I want to say not resist so vociferously. However, vociferous adoption of something else is actually what's called for. I'm not saying do away with banks or anything like that. They have served a purpose. They've had their effect, and they're continuing to. However, a solution that will work for everyone is not going to come from the bank because their concern is about capital, protecting it, and getting more of it at whatever expense to you. They don't. It doesn't really matter. But you need to be. I'm saying you need to be. I need to be. If we're in alignment with natural law, if we realize that what we put out comes back to us, and if we realize our own equality, what is our equality? It's certainly not that we look the same in terms of equal looks. It's something else. We have an equal ability to imagine, and we can imagine as large or as small. We can imagine as expansively or as constrictedly, and that may have been redundant, okay, to large and small, but we can also imagine harmoniously and acrimoniously. All right. Much of what we're getting has to do with acrimony, has to do with enmity, has to do with dread, um, calamity. And we're free to do that. But we're also free to imagine something different, conceive it, and actually create it. And so, with Cliff's High's predictive linguistics, that is the evidence that what humanity is talking about is predictive, and that's also the power of our words, because the power of our words are the power, and they come from the power of our thoughts, and they come from the power of our intentions. you know I could say this, that things could be much worse. I could imagine things be much worse and being much worse than they even are today, but I would dare say that it's our intention, our individual and collective attention, an intention. Our intentions are such that it's not as bad as it could be. I can imagine things being far worse, and things aren't that great in a lot of places, but things are great in many, many places. And today, and alternatives do exist. So, what I'm going to do for the next few minutes, because time does pass, and here I'm looking here at 54 minutes. I'm at it. Man, Derek, I love you. Thank you for being there. The thing is, I'm just going to show the co op site, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what it does. Uh, when someone really wants to do this, we talk. There are presentations. No presentation that I've ever seen talks from this standpoint, especially when you talk about the standpoint that we are not our bodies, that there is no death. And so, therefore, some people would think when you think your body and then they call into question, do you exist? Or how many people have the idea, well, once you're dead, you're gone, that's the end, zilch, etc. They're not thinking beyond this life, they're not thinking beyond this experience. You are free to imagine any experience that you are capable of imagining. And guess what? No matter what you're capable of imagining right now, there's something even greater to be experienced, to be realized. And whether it's in this life or not is immaterial. Whether you start it now, whether you plant the seeds now is what's important. People are telling me about what I'm going to do in a year from now, and and people are sitting around talking about things that they want to see happen sometime, and then they're keeling over and they're gone. We need to establish, we need to install within our consciousness the idea that I am, I have always been, and I always will be. You could say some when and somewhere. Okay. So you can do that. But at this point in time, because I have a form that interacts in this particular realm, at some point in time, I'm going to check out, I'm going to pull the plug on this, and this is not going to be this will be fertilizer. Okay, it'll be ashes, it'll nourish something. But while I'm here, I can act knowing that whatever it is that I want will come. We live in a universe of infinite supply, infinite potential, infinite energy. We may not know it, we may not be practicing it, but it still is the facts. And we are living proof of life, is what we are. And life itself is intelligent. And so it's up to us with free will. We can act as dumb as we want to. We can close our eyes to what's right in front of us, or we can open our eyes to what's in front of us too. And we can take positive actions as well as fearful ones. That is free will. But from the free will standpoint, we don't get benefit by taking that acrimonious, that fearful fork, so to speak, in the road. It's a conscious choice. You want to grow, you grow your consciousness. And love, truth, courage, all of those are I'm just going to say the criteria. Those are the tokens of information. Those are the tokens of consciousness that gain you access to greater and more expanded ways of seeing and ways of being, as well as ways of realization, of creation of actual experiences. Our experience becomes the feedback loop. It always has been, to tell us that you're in the right direction, or maybe you should make some adjustment here and adjustments there. We have made habits out of following the advice of people who call experts, who've written books about something that they've not even done themselves. They don't know enough of the story to realize where their position is incorrect. And yet, if they've made a whole bunch of money, or someone else they put them in front of a teleprompter, the vast majority oftentimes listens to them and follows their advice, oftentimes because they need something that they have in insufficient supply, called money. So the thing that I'll tell you about the co-op system, because I'm inviting you to send me a friend request, and if you haven't already, just direct message me and click on. You go to the site and actually join, and then I'll help you to fund your account for one thing. And at which point in time, you're going to want to invite 3 people to do just what you did. And so, uh, what I'm doing right now is getting over to my co-op page, and then I'll show it to you. But so, in a nutshell, in terms of what makes with all that I've said here just now, and a nutshell of what makes this system and what it does for those actions. I'm going to say important, desirable, is basically this, is that the system is first of all based on the principles of cooperation. I mentioned that everyone is equal in the system. When I say equal in the system, what's required in terms of input is basically the same. Is you can do it one way, or one of three ways, or you can do once and grow up and do all three. But I'll go to the end. What is the end that you get here? When you satisfy the criteria of the system itself, because everything has criteria. Life has criteria. So this is no different from anything else. If you think a certain way, you act a certain way, you're going to get this kind of experience. If you think a different way, you're going to get this kind of experience. One of them you're going to love, the other, well, you're going to probably be encouraged to think differently. This entire system is based on that. It models, it mimics the universe itself. But what happens is this: when you do this, you invite three people to do the same thing and they do it. And then three people that you invite, when they invite their three, which is nine more, every time someone invites is invited, and every time they join, someone is receiving. You're giving, you're receiving immediately, so you get positive reinforcement. So I join, I invite someone, they fund, I receive, and six other people receive. The person that I invited, you have funded, now you're inviting three people. Every time someone opens a wallet and funds, you receive, I receive, and then four other people in this initial baby system. Now, what is that creating? It's creating a ripple effect. It's creating where you're putting a wave out of a certain type of experience and you're getting immediate responses back to it. So, the value that's in your co op wallet, and this is one thing I will show you logging in. If you haven't seen it, maybe you have. Uh, I will go into my site, and because in this background, simply for even joining, you will receive what's called a co-op wallet that comes with your account, and that's here right here. Now I know there's not much in mind at this point in time, so at this point in time, again, I'm going to be doing this particular talk in this particular way till Friday, to the December 22nd. I will continue to talk about this, but one of the things that this has done for me, at least, is to help me establish, I want to say, the habit of talking, particularly, and which is something I want to say my spirit, my soul, my consciousness has wanted me to do, and I have been disinclined. Okay, I have been reticent to do so. So at this point in time, I'm not planning on making this a habit. But right now, I got $11.57 in equivalent value. Everything into this system is done in crypto. So I sent Ethereum in. You can do USDT. You can do all those things, but it keeps track of all the transactions. You can see there have been many transactions, and it keeps track of all those. So my balance has gone up and gone down, etc. Now, the other part of it has to do with uh, activation, and that basically involves, pull that up, co-op tokens. And so once you join, you will basically buy some tokens, and you can buy one, you can buy uh, or three for that matter. You can do a pay it forward, so and just buy three tokens up front of these co-op 20 tokens. It'll cost all about $67. And like if I do this, the system is going to create an invoice, which I will not, I won't be funding it. But you see there's $60 there. Yep. Nope. No, it's not. It's saying nothing at the moment. Let me get out of the field. There you go. Yeah. So if I continue there, and you can do just one for that matter. Like I said, all you need is one. You can invite other three people to do the same thing. Just put one in. If you do the three, like I'm doing right here, then you have 3 tokens and you can send them out to the individual. But if I click here using MetaMask just as an example, the system is going to make an invoice, and you're going to see you select it's defaulted to Ethereum. And so I would put that value of Ethereum in. And look, there's that. What's it? Yep. $70.66. Now, but look at here. Uh, 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 well, Ethereum is what you can do right now, especially with this. There are times where you can put a whole bunch of different in, and so there's every time I come up, but the system functions. So you put some Ethereum in, and do the transaction, and then you will get and receive the tokens. At which point time you can actually pay it forward yourself, for example, and I can look at other things. There may be other things about this that I'm not going to analyze now, but that is really the basics of how this works. And then the process, the activity continues. Yes, it's different. It is very much different. And while I log off and come back on here, there we go. I can do it right here. However, as your um, balance goes up, because it will go up automatically. And as your balance goes up, everything that is above that minimum we talked about from $20, if on this cooperative, and there are 2 additional cooperatives. Those are for the representative of the other 2 values for starting. Everything above that minimum amount is yours to use as you want. You can withdraw it as you want, and it's life. And what happens is that as more people continue to join based on your invitation, then your income just continues to grow, and it grows every 28 days, because when you keep that minimum balance in every 28 days, you're receiving from the same people. And this is how a trickle of income that's modest in the beginning becomes very substantial, even to the point where it's coming in all the time. This is very much very organic, and it is unlike anything else. So I'm going to uh, check out for now. Oh gosh, we're at 107, 67 minutes, and thank you for being here, for your presence. I will be here tomorrow. We'll talk about something else, but ultimately, I want to help everyone not only see a vision, a possible vision that we want to make happen, but also that we take steps now to make happen. And that certainly can be done with this. And if you got any questions, think about them. And while we're talking, I'll answer those too. Anyway, till next time, you take care, Derek, and peace, be well, be prosperous, everyone. And I love you all.